This was so satisfying to watch. Megyn Kelly just couldn't take it anymore with David Pakman's half-truths on the immigration debate, which is why we're revisiting this epic clash as it regards one of the most decisive debates for this election. Subscribe to the channel for more discussions like this, and let's dive in.
Are we doing better under Joe Biden when it comes to illegal immigration than we were under Trump?
How do you define better?
Fewer.
People continue to cross over illegally as they have for, 100 years, 200 years?
So it's the same.
I think that one of the funny things that has
That's not
happened
honest.
is that for months, I'm sorry, I think we're talking over each other.
No, I'm saying that's dishonest. You're saying don't trust the Republicans on their messaging, and you come on here and want to tell me that it's the same. They're just continuing.
No,
there's been no increase.
There have been periods of
a couple of months ago we had 10,000 a day crossing the southern border. Go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, I think we're all talking over each other.
Now,
go ahead, David. The floor is yours. Wait, Hogan, I'll bring you in, but let me defend that. Go ahead, David.
Oh, okay. No, listen, based on the Border Patrol statistics, there have been times during the Biden administration where crossings have on average been below where they were under Trump. At some points, they were above that. The funniest part to me about immigration is that now that Republicans themselves torpedoed the bill they wanted because Trump said, no, I need something to run on, I need something to do, Biden puts in place this limitation, which, by the way, doesn't solve the reason people are trying to come here. We need more immigration judges. I'm glad Biden made this point. Now that he did it, they're still not happy. And they're saying, well, it's only for political reasons. Why do you think Trump wanted to do this? It's also for political reasons. So this seems like a political game to me when the reality, Megyn, is we never permanently deal with DACA. We never permanently deal with the reasons people even want to come over here in the first place. It's a lame political football.
And that right there is a perfect personification of why it's nearly impossible to have a productive bipartisan conversation on immigration. Much of the far left on the issue just refuses to first define the terms of the debate. Illegal migration is not the same as legal migration. Migration is not the same as asylum, and scale of illegal migration is one of the most fundamental metrics on deciding the success or failure of any administration on the issue. America is a nation of immigrants that have contributed and enriched it, but that can't be a catch-all response when confronted with illegal border crossing, especially as they've risen to sky-high levels in the past 4 years. Data from the Pew Research Center tells you that over 11 million of the total 48 million migrant population in the United States are unauthorized. The least you can do is approach this question while distinguishing between the two, and by the way, for someone like David Pakman, that means just saying clearly what he believes, even if it sounds outlandish at first. For example, he's previously said specifically about illegal migration that it's a net positive for the country because the U.S. population's on a decline. Should be easy enough to say that, but there's at least a starting point to the conversation.
I have to say, David, I appreciate you coming on the show because we don't get a lot of progressives, and they know I don't really agree with them on most things.
I don't know why not.
I actually I appreciate you being here and saying, the way you see these things and the way the left views these things, because it's actually educational.
Well, I don't know about the left, but listen, I'm on the left. Countries have a right to enforce immigration policy. If you're here illegally, of course, you're subject to deportation. I think that there's a caricaturizing that happens of the left on this issue. I'm an immigrant from Argentina. We came here legally. I'm now an American citizen. People still write to me and say, you should go back to Argentina. But listen, I don't want the left characterized as something that it isn't on this issue. You'll never hear me say a country doesn't have a right to enforce
dead to rights.
policy.
Otherwise, we'd have different policy. Hogan, you work for the Trump administration. The first thing that Joe Biden did when he took over was to reverse the three principal things that Trump was doing to stop the flow of illegal migrants across the southern border: the Remain in Mexico program, the asylum seekers en masse, and the construction of the border wall. He shut it all down. He sold off all the parts. You couldn't even try to rebuild the wall thanks to what he did.
David Pakman has often spoken about the bipartisan border security bill that refused to find political consensus earlier this year as a way to make the case that the Republican Party is not even serious on the issue to begin with. But in fact, the reason was a peculiar clause in the bill that said 5,000 illegal border crossings a day for a week would trigger rapid removal of those migrants, but the Republican Party and Donald Trump believed it was too high of a threshold. Not just that, it was seen as a half-baked attempt on the Democratic side to give the impression of tighter border security right around the time that the immigration issue was making the Joe Biden presidency very unpopular in an election. Donald Trump was clearly not willing to meet halfway on the immigration issue while giving the Democrats another talking point for the election campaign. Eventually, the bill failed to find consensus, and it's interesting just from a political angle because the Democrats and Joe Biden have been willing to use unilateral executive action on immigrants before, including ending the DACA program as well as halting the construction of the Trump-era border wall, which were two of Biden's first executive orders.
When Barack Obama's immigration head said 1,000 a day is a crisis, that is a true crisis. Whatever we do, we can't let it get to 1,000 a day. And now here we are with an influx of over, more than 8 million since then. That's not even counting the numbers that did come in under Trump, though he was committed to trying to stop that. So now here we are with let's call it 10 million, 11. I know the numbers are vastly bigger than that, but let's just call it 10 million. With this president saying 2,500, definitely 1,500 is fine. We won't suspend asylum, which is nuts. I mean, that's absolutely nuts to me, Dave. Why is the threshold anywhere near this high?
This is to me?
Yeah.
Oh, so here's my view on immigration, and I already laid out part of it. I believe that without immigrants, the country collapses, and I think it's abundantly clear. If anything, as far as legal immigration, we probably need to increase it significantly to remain globally competitive, especially as birth rates are starting to decline. Big picture, I think that that's a big issue here. In addition to this, when it comes to the sort of crime narrative, we know from very good studies, both state and federal, both documented and undocumented immigrants commit crime at lower rates than natural-born citizens. Now, I know Trump
even
loves
one
the
is too
lurid
many. Let me just take you on that. Well, even one is too many. Why do I have to deal with these illegal immigrants committing felonies against my friends or family when they shouldn't even be here? American-born, that's one thing. I got to deal with Americans. Why should I have to deal with somebody from Venezuela who snuck in here illegally and committed a felony against a family member?
Good question. Now, the statistics on crime in relation to immigration are contested on both sides, and we don't even need to get into them. But a discussion on principle is much easier to have and should be much less controversial. A person that wants to migrate to another country first accepts the laws and values of that country, somewhat like accepting the terms and conditions of any service. If someone's first action in the country is a violation of the law, then dismissing that entirely means opening up the door of more of the same. Until that slippery slope ends up in a situation that's completely out of control. The House Committee on Homeland Security released a report that revealed over 8 million undocumented migrants in the country under Biden's watch, with 1.7 million of those being gotaways, and that chaos at the south border is making it a hub for illegal cartels and human trafficking rings. That's the very real human cost of this political debate, and the first step is to at least be open and upfront about the language and facts. Apparently that's too much for Biden to accept, to apologize for calling the illegal migrant who ended up taking the life of Laken Riley as illegal in the first place. Take a look at this.
During your response to her heckling of you, you used the word illegal when talking about the man who allegedly killed Laken Riley.
An undocumented person. And I shouldn't have used illegal. I should have, it's undocumented. And look, when I spoke about the difference between Trump and me, one of the things I talked about on the border was that the way he talks about vermin, the way he talks about these people polluting the blood. I talked about what I'm not going to do, what I won't do. I'm not going to treat any of these people with disrespect. Look, they built the country. The reason our economy is growing. We have to control the border and more orderly flow, but I don't share his view at all.
So you regret using that word?
Yes.
None of that is ever going to lead to a truly productive conversation that gets us anywhere, and you just saw a snapshot of that with David Pakman. Unfortunately, this entire debate has too often been marred by extremism on both ends of the political spectrum, to the point that true bipartisan dialogue is completely lost. But as long as that happens, there's people on the ground who these politicians swear to protect who will suffer. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this exchange, because it's a microcosm of just how much talking past each other happens on immigration today in our modern political discourse.